Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. It took a while, but winter has finally arrived on the south coast.
It just didn't feel festive this year, so this is definitely a good change.
We just made a snowman and we're pretty excited.
El Nino is essentially on pause right now.
The warmest December on record gives way to a blast of winter. Today, just a taste of what's to come. Plus, search and rescue crews level serious allegations against the province.
The pushback and bullying and threats that we were getting from EMCR staff was just not a healthy relationship.
Half a dozen teams accuse the government of bullying, intimidation, and ignoring safety concerns. Also, trying to house the unhoused in tiny homes.
This is the scene now. The replacement would be proper structured pods that are clean, that are safe.
A volunteer-led project that started in Prince George tries to bring the solution to Vancouver.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Dan is off tonight. After months of mild weather, a small blast of winter hit much of BC today. Snowfall warnings are blanketing many regions of the province tonight. And it could be just a foreshadowing of what's yet to come later this week. As our John Hernandez is finding out, temperatures are set to plummet.
The snow is starting to pile up atop Burnaby Mountain. For many who live up here, it's better late than never.
I think it's really exciting. We were hoping for a white Christmas and we didn't get it, and now we've got it. We've just made a snowman.
It just didn't feel festive this year, so this is definitely a good change.
But commuters might be a bit more wary.
It's always a little bit nerve-wracking because I live out in the suburbs across the Portman Bridge, and I'm never sure what it's going to be like at SFU or what the commute's going to be like.
Commuter chaos that never quite came. Snow began falling across Metro Vancouver this morning, but turned into rainfall by the afternoon. Still, meteorologists warn it could be a sign of what's to come.
We need to be cognizant that this is kind of the prelude to a very interesting week of weather. El Nino is essentially on pause right now.
After an unseasonably warm December, snow has been piling up on BC mountain passes. Today, police confirmed a fatal crash on the Coquihalla south of Merritt and are urging drivers to slow down. Snowfall warnings have been issued for parts of the Fraser Valley and Howe Sound.
If you're traveling through and everything else, make sure you've got fuel in your vehicles and you have prepared yourself.
Sometimes we forget that we are in the mountains and conditions can change very, very quickly.
Temperatures are expected to drop well below zero through the week, including in Metro Vancouver. Officials warn that could mean challenging commutes in the days ahead.
We're out there trying to make it safe for the traveling public as much as possible. If we have congestion or a lot of vehicles out in the road, our trucks travel the same speed that the congestion is moving, so it just slows us down.
And then there's the wind, which is also expected and could coincide with high tides, a combination that's proved particularly destructive in years past.
We're especially concerned along the Victoria Coast, southern, towards Juan de Fuca Strait, the Gulf Islands, and maybe even Boundary Bay.
The potential for an eventful week after a quiet start to the winter. John Hernandez, CBC News, Burnaby.
Well, parts of Vancouver Island saw 10 centimeters of snow today. And as Claire Palmer tells us, more snow is expected there as well later this week.
Nanaimo has its first taste of winter.
Take your time, be careful. It's our first shot of winter, so it's a big adjustment for a lot of people, but give yourself lots of time and lots of space to get where you need to go safely.
Snow has been in the forecast for almost a week, and the city of Nanaimo has been preparing.
All weekend we had trucks out preparing the roads, and we're seeing another band coming in later in the week, so we're treating this as a bit of a training session, making sure all of our equipment is ready to go when we're expecting to see more snow and colder temperatures starting Thursday morning.
Some areas on Vancouver Island were expecting to get 5 to 10 centimeters of snow today. In Nanaimo, it was a mix of rain and snow. Many are taking the chance to get their snow tires on after a mild start to the winter. At Cal Tire, business is picking up.
The first snowfall of the year brings in a lot of customers. Usually when the snow falls in November, December, it's usually busier then, but that early January snowfall can also cause a lot of customers to come and get tires and get their winter tires put on.
Today is just a taste of what's to come, with more snow and accumulation in the forecast for later this week.
Yeah, snow tires are number one, right? A lot of people don't even have snow tires. Chains aren't necessary around here, and just drive slow and watch out for guys that are clearing the roads and making it safe.
Stay home if you have to.
Stay home unless you need something. Don't go up to the grocery store for a loaf of bread at 7 a.m. because we run into those people all the time.
Monday's snow mostly turned to rain and mixed precipitation by the afternoon. For now, it's important to adjust your driving, watch the weather, and stay warm. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Well, the North Shore Mountains have also been covered by some long overdue snow. As our Saurabh Sandhu is finding out, skiers and snowboarders alike say it's better late than never.
Chris Chow and his family are season pass holders at Mount Seymour Park. For the last few days, they have been eagerly monitoring the webcams at the park for signs of snow.
You looked at the cameras and there was gravel on the grounds, and you could see the rocks poking through it.
But that changed on Friday when the park received a fresh dump of snow.
We've had over 64 centimeters of snowfall in 3 days, bringing our settled snow depth up to about 60 centimeters.
It was almost like overnight, it was like winter. My wife quickly jumped on the booking site and booked our 4-hour time slot.
And many others made the most of the opportunity.
Stoked, so stoked. Like, happy it's here. I have stuff to do now. Good times.
I hope we're getting more because some are not open yet, so yes, it's really exciting.
It was looking pretty dire there for a while, but you know, winter always comes around eventually.
A warm start to the winter and the lack of snow left many in the skiing community disappointed, taking some charm of the holiday season this year. With more snow in forecasts, snow enthusiasts are once again lining up at local ski hills. Staff at Mount Seymour Park say they're confident of catching up after a late start to the season.
We've seen the turning point now for winter. This should be good for the full winter ahead. I think the good news is we've got 3 months in front of us of the season.
Things are looking better for other local ski hills as well, with Grouse and Cypress Mountains reporting close to 50 centimeters of snow in the last 48 hours. Environment Canada is forecasting more winter weather for the region later this week, with potential for snow on higher elevations. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, North Vancouver.
And let's bring in our Darius Madavi now. And Darius, at least at sea level, it seemed almost at that tipping point where we're nearing the freezing mark, but still mostly just rain.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you have to be careful about that tipping point because sometimes if we're just close to 0, 2 degrees or so, you can have the rain bring that colder air down with it and turn itself into snow. So you might be expecting, oh, we're 2 degrees, we're safe. Not quite, the snow could still come. And that is what happened for part of this morning. We did see snow when temperatures were cooler. This was only the last 12 hours, so we sort of missed some of the snow that did make its way to Vancouver. But we can see at times that we did see some snowfall, even as temperatures did continue to rise. But as they continue to do that over the next couple days, we will see more rain and less snow. But we'll take a closer look at that after. But you can see quite an active system making its way across much of the island. Lots of snow, lots of rain coming, and that is going to continue to transition to more rain over the next couple days before we take a big swing back towards snow at the end of the week. But you can see here we have a very active day in terms of the weather watches and warnings. We have snowfall warnings across the province, winter storm warnings for many of our mountain passes and highways, and wind warnings for parts of the coast, as well as a special weather statement warning of particularly high tides, because we do have just sort of a this really bad mixture of really high winds and naturally a high tide at this time of year. But this is going to be sort of a weather hit of teasers because we're going to talk a little bit more about all of this later this hour. But you can see we have this polar vortex that's sort of broken down a little bit, and it's pushing all this Arctic air down. So enjoy the 2 days of slightly warmer weather, 6 or 7 degrees tomorrow and Wednesday, before the really cold stuff comes at the end of this week. All right. Thank you, Darius. We'll talk to you again in a few minutes. Serious allegations are being leveled over how the BC government is handling the province's search and rescue community. The former head of the BC Search and Rescue Association says he sent a 7-page letter to the province outlining bullying and safety concerns. And as Mira Baines reports, other agencies are backing up his claims.
Some members of BC Search and Rescue community are speaking out over their treatment by the Ministry for Emergency Management and Climate Readiness staff. That ministry was just created last year, but some say there have been problems.
There were several issues that came up, including safety issues, including the lack of ability to use new technology and search and rescue that could save lives today, and the pushback and bullying and threats that we were getting from EMCR staff was just not a healthy relationship.
Yoakum has written a 7-page letter to Premier David Eby. Trouble has been brewing since November when the ministry directed the province's 78 search and rescue groups to register with the Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Agency. The province provides $6 million of base funding to the groups, and they fundraise the rest.
When we have disagreements with policy, we are afraid to push it, and there's been a lot of use of that leverage against us, which is grown in anger and frustration.
Volunteer members, about 3,400 across the province, would be covered by liability insurance if they sign on, but some groups worry their everyday life-saving operations will be hindered by government bureaucracy. One source of controversy has been the use of Artemis, a new technology, but rescuers say they need permission from the Department of National Defense, and the province is refusing to support their case.
It's actually a flying cell tower, so when the airplane takes off that's equipped with this, they can locate a cell phone from 30 miles away with a 10-meter accuracy.
They also want access to drones so rescuers can reach hard-to-reach areas. The groups emphasize they want a collaborative relationship with the ministry. The BC government responded to the allegations. George Heyman, the acting Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, said in a statement that the concerns raised in this letter are very troubling, and I intend to meet with the BC Search and Rescue Association this month to discuss and address these concerns. Together, I am confident we can re-establish the trust and effective collaborative relationships that British Columbians need and expect. Search and rescue agencies say the deadline to register with the Emergency Management Agency is February 15th. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The former president of a Northern BC Pride organization has been arrested and charged with committing child sex crimes. 39-year-old Sean Gravel served as board president for the North Peace Pride Society since 2018, but was recently removed from the role. The charges include sexual interference of a person under 16 and possession of child pornography. The alleged offenses all took place in or around Fort St. John, but have not been tested or proven in court. Gravel's arraignment hearing is scheduled for January 19th. A man injured in a shooting in Coquitlam over the weekend has now died. It happened in the middle of the afternoon Saturday near Westwood Street and Glen Drive. The victim has been identified as a 21-year-old Coquitlam man. It marked the third shooting in as many days in Coquitlam. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says this was targeted, and it's now working to figure out if all of these recent shootings are somehow connected. An update now on that carjacking at gunpoint in Surrey yesterday that ended with a stolen car crashing with a police cruiser. 3 men in their early 20s have now been charged. RCMP say the car was stolen in Surrey, then wound up colliding with a Langley police cruiser at a traffic stop. One officer was taken to the hospital with minor injuries, and one suspect was also treated for a minor bite from a police dog. And during a search of the stolen car, officers found 3 loaded firearms and ammunition. Investigators are still trying to figure out the motive. Well, the Surrey Board of Trade is calling for a swift resolution to the Metro Vancouver transit strike. Nearly 200 employees of Coast Mountain Bus Company began refusing overtime this weekend. Workers include supervisors overseeing everything from engineering to transit communications. The union representing transit workers says it will affect bus service for riders. Key issues include wage increases and unsustainable workloads, they say, related to low staffing levels. Coast Mountain is urging striking workers to return to the bargaining table with what it calls realistic expectations. If the impasse continues, the union says job action could escalate to the point of shutting down all bus service. Well, BC's Transportation Minister has written a letter to Ottawa calling on the federal government to help reduce overpass crashes. The province vowed tough fines last month after a truck carrying heavy construction material smashed into an overpass in Delta. But Minister Rob Fleming says there are regulatory challenges that need to be addressed with leadership from Ottawa. Specifically, he's concerned that trucking companies from one province may operate in other jurisdictions if they carry the right safety certificate, licensing, and insurance. The minister here hopes Ottawa can work with provinces to improve that model. Well, hospitalized patients in this province have more complex needs than they used to. That's according to a new UBC study. After compiling data from nearly 3.5 million non-elective hospitalizations in BC between 2002 and 2017, UBC researchers found that patients have become more likely to be admitted via the emergency department, have multiple medical issues, rely on 10 or more medications, be 75 years or older, and suffer an adverse event while in the hospital. Now, researchers say the increased complexity doesn't mean that more people are dying in the hospital, which they say suggests the healthcare system is adapting well to patients' needs. In Prince George, volunteers have built over a dozen tiny homes for unhoused people. Now advocates want to bring that same project to Vancouver. But as Michelle Morton explains, the city is not on board.
So you'd literally take this out and put another structure. It would be about this tall.
Brad Gustafson is leading an initiative that aims to provide better shelter options for those living in tents at Crab Park.
When we started the effort, we specifically had to address three things: safety for their persons, security for their belongings, and a warmth that a tent cannot provide.
The project started in Prince George, where volunteers helped set up 18 tiny homes built at an encampment in the city.
Oh, it just warms the heart. The first lady we gave it to, she was like, "Oh, this is beautiful," and it's just a very basic structure, but for them, it's like just a huge upgrade from a tent, right?
Construction company InGreen Systems is on board to expand the project to Crab Park in Vancouver.
The pods can definitely go right all along here in 2 or 3 roads.
Yeah.
Sean Balagi is the president.
InGreen Systems is ready to go. We can have pods here next week as long as we have city's cooperation. So we are here to provide a solution. So we just want the city to come and meet us.
But the city of Vancouver said in a statement it does not support this project. Instead, it says it has a 2-year-long tiny shelter pilot project in a Strathcona parking lot, which it will assess to inform future projects of this type. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Real estate experts are warning of a worrying trend in Canada. With high interest rates and a market showing signs of cooling, more buyers are walking away from pre-sale deposits. Our Yvette Bren spoke with one man who lost his family's savings and his dreams for a new home.
Sudeep Sebergal reads over the contract for his first Canadian home that ended in tears.
On the closing date, 31st July, I went and wept in the street side office.
He put down nearly $82,000 as a deposit on a pre-sale townhome, but when he couldn't sell his home in New Delhi, he couldn't afford to close.
Despite my best efforts, I was not able to sell it off. And then unexpectedly, we had floods in Delhi, and it just made everything very complicated.
So he found another buyer to take over the contract, but the developer refused and kept his deposit.
I have been ruined.
As interest rates rise and the real estate market slows in Canada, realtors say more people are walking away from deposits on pre-sale homes. But it's tough to walk away unscathed.
Never buy without using a lawyer. That would be very foolish. And the fact is that you will have to come up with the money if nothing else happens on the day of closing. You have to be prepared to close.
Pre-sale contracts are complex, and even if developers agree to return a deposit, there's a stiff penalty.
Developers will have experienced counsel draft contracts that maybe make a lot of sense for the developer, maybe not as much wiggle room and towards the buyer.
He says developers can often refuse for any reason. The development company declined an interview, but emailed a statement saying they encouraged Sebergal to seek legal advice, calling the situation a private legal matter. Sebergal says he can't afford court.
I may have to return back to India, and my Canadian dreams have been ruined and crashed.
He says he just wants his deposit back to try to start his new life in Canada again. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
We take you now to a live shot of North Vancouver, where many in the Iranian community have gathered at a memorial. It's in honor of those killed in 2020 when their flight was shot down shortly after taking off from Tehran. It was headed for Ukraine. 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents were among the 176 people killed, many with ties to BC. Ukrainian Airlines flight PS-752 was shot down by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Earlier tonight, we spoke to one of the organizers of this vigil about why it's important for them to continue to mark the tragedy 4 years later.
Good news, after 4 years, the four countries, the affected countries, UK, Canada, Ukraine, and Sweden, brought the case to ICAO, as well as ICJ, the International Court of Justice. This should have happened 4 years ago, but with these events, with this awareness that we are working on, we put pressure on the politicians to file these cases against Iran.
Premier David Eby says the province is working with the city of North Vancouver to create a permanent monument to remember those who died. Wondering why you get certain aches and pains? Want to know what to do when you get them? After the break, Dr. Melissa Lem joins us with answers to some of the most common health questions she hears in her practice. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A tiny frog that has presented big hurdles to construction projects in Gatineau, Quebec, may now stand in the way of a major highway project. The western chorus frog, no bigger than a loonie, is a threatened species in Canada. And as Mike Crawley reports, the animal has now been found along the proposed route for Highway 413 at the northwestern edge of the GTA.
Meet the western chorus frog. Fully grown, it's only about the size of your thumb.
It's not always easy to spot a chorus frog, so the best way to know if they're around is by listening for them.
During mating season, right after the snow melts, the call of the male chorus frog sounds a bit like when you ripple the teeth of a comb. It prefers to breed in small, shallow, seasonal ponds, and it's on Canada's list of species at risk, classed as threatened.
Certainly habitat loss is a big factor. Many of these temporary ponds are not highly valued or thought of as being important habitats, so they're often the first kind of habitat that gets drained and developed.
On the outskirts of Montreal's suburbs, the presence of western chorus frogs halted a housing development and road construction. Researchers have found the threatened frog along the proposed route of Highway 413.
Western chorus frogs, though, are particularly sensitive to changes in the quality of their environment, which no doubt Highway 413, no matter how many really, positive mitigation measures you take, it will have an impact on the aquatic environment.
The highway would run for nearly 60 kilometers across the northwestern edges of the GTA. The Ford government has yet to say how much it will cost, but some estimates put it near $10 billion.
We need to build this infrastructure. It's good for the economy, it's good for jobs, and most importantly, it's going to give more people time back in their day.
The Trudeau government has ordered the project to face a federal environmental assessment. The Ford government has launched a court case to try to quash that.
We're going to make sure that we follow environmental protections that we have very vigorously put in place, but it's our priority to build 413.
The battle between Ottawa and the province over who gets final say on the highway is expected to make its way through the courts this year. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
welcome back. When one of the tasks that many people schedule for the beginning of the year is often a full body checkup, and there are often common questions that come up with many patients. Our CBC Health columnist, Dr. Melissa Lem, has noticed some patterns with what people are asking, and she joins us live now to talk about these repeated concerns. Dr. Lem, thanks for being here. So we asked you to put together a list of the most common health questions you get at your practice as a family physician. So the first one, we'll go right through them. You can take us through what you tell your patients. Should someone be concerned if they don't get their period at the same time each month?
This is a really common question, especially in younger women who are just starting to have their periods. And in fact, there is quite a large range of normal in terms of menstrual cycle length. So it's defined as day 1 of one period to day 1 of the next, and that can vary anywhere from 21 days to 35 days. Now, if you notice that your periods they start out regular and they start to get more regular, or you're consistently falling outside that 3 to 5 week boundary, then you should probably see your doctor, because there are conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, hormonal issues, and pregnancy, for example, that can delay or make your periods irregular.
Quite a wide range. Sounds to be quite normal, though, in many cases. This next one, I have a 2-year-old, so I can relate. A lot of patients asking, my toddler put an object up his nose. How do I get it out?
This is something that really frequently happens in actually children under 4 years old. So your toddler is in exactly that right age range, because they don't know how to blow their noses yet. And also they still tend to stick things up their noses that they shouldn't. And there is a technique that every parent of young children should know called mother's kiss, where first of all, you tell the child, okay, I'm going to give you a big kiss. What you do is you actually seal your mouth around the child's mouth, and then you block the nostril that doesn't have the object in it with your finger, and then you give a little bit of air, and once you feel resistance, that's their vocal cords closing, and then give a puff of air, and 60% of the time, that foreign body will come out of the nostril that it's in, and that might just mean that you can avoid a visit to the doctor.
That is a great tip. I hadn't heard of that. I'm taking notes. The next question, do I need antibiotics for my sore throat? We know it's that time of year, so what's your advice?
80% of the time, the answer is you probably don't, because most sore throats are caused by viruses which do not respond to antibiotics. And some clues that you might have a virus are the fact that other parts of your body might be affected, not just your throat. So if you have a runny nose and a cough, chances are you don't need antibiotics. Clues that you may need antibiotics for something like strep throat are if you look back in your throat and you see a lot of pus, like yellow and white stuff back there, if you have tender lymph nodes on your neck, and also if you have a fever. But that said, some viruses can cause the same symptoms. So a lot of doctors these days are doing a throat swab first and then waiting for the results to come back before they prescribe antibiotics to cut down on the risk of resistance, because not every bug needs a drug.
Good to know all those symptoms, because, yeah, it does sound like there is quite a difference there. Next question, my blood pressure is high, but I feel completely fine. Do I really need to take medication?
There's a reason why hypertension or high blood pressure is called the silent killer, is because many people have no idea that they have it because they have no symptoms, but it's damaging your body in the background, increasing your risk of heart disease and stroke and serious conditions like kidney failure. And so the bottom line is that every adult, 18 and over, for the rest of their lives, should at least once a year get their blood pressure checked to be able to detect and get on top of these issues early. Because if you can't manage your blood pressure with lifestyle, or diet or exercise or quitting smoking, that sort of stuff, then sometimes medication may be necessary to treat your high blood pressure.
All right, Dr. Lem, thank you. Some fascinating questions we know a lot of people have been asking, so we appreciate you taking the time to answer them.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. Coming up, all of Boeing's 737's MAX 9 jets have been grounded. The newest problems for a plane that's seen its fair share of problems coming up next. Stay with us.
The muffins have fiber, a bunch of micronutrients in them, so they're both nutritious and delicious.
I was surprised that we aren't taught more about eating and nutrition, and a lot of the focus is on, what specific medications, what drugs can we give? And so this is really an area that is quite new in Canada, the whole culinary medicine field. But something that we really hope to start expanding on with this elective.
So it'll be great to be able to have this conversation with any future patients I have.
and sort of be able to have that knowledge to have these conversations about healthy eating.
This concept is so unfamiliar to people, and this elective is quite novel. It's the first of its kind in a Canadian medical school. And so I think that if this elective is successful throughout this year and, it catches the attention of people in our school and also other schools, we hope that they can see, because it's student-led and was still successful, it can be implemented in other areas and hopefully even incorporated into curriculum for all medical students.
It's important to be educated about the food that you eat, and as a future physician, it's especially important to know how to talk about food, diet, and how that plays a major role in your life.
I think the struggle with maybe doctors who are practicing is that we only get so much time to see each patient, and so sometimes those lifestyle modifications can be easy to just list off at the end, and we don't make enough time or are not as comfortable teaching about it. And even learning when is appropriate to refer to a dietitian is something that we're teaching people here, and that's why we do have a dietitian in all of our cooking sessions.
Really excited about this week's topic because it's about brain health. Anytime you can eat fruits and vegetables also helps with memory and cognition.
So they can speak to their role and help us learn how they can help, because collaboration is also such a big part of medicine. So being able to realize when to lean on your teammates as well in a medical team is something that students are learning.
Health is a big role, and nutrition plays a big part of that. We can kind of come back to just those basic cooking skills. That actually translates into positive outcomes. Empowering people to be like, okay, you can do this. It's not as hard as we think it is. Just little small changes can make big impacts later on. I think we have to shift away from that mindset of what shouldn't I eat? It's more what should you eat? What amazing things are out there that we can add to help they taste good, plus they add nutrition.
We're adding brown sugar, cinnamon, and also some more chocolate chips and almond slivers to decorate.
I'm hoping the collaboration between the physicians and the dietitians will just be even more of a stronger foundation than it is right now.
You always have to taste what you make.
Really impressed.
Welcome back. Inspectors are starting to check out Boeing's fleet of 737 MAX 9s. One of those planes had to make an emergency landing in Oregon on Friday after a panel blew out mid-flight. CBC's Sasha Petrusik has the latest on more problems spotted on other planes as well.
Boeing 737 MAX 9 jets remain grounded worldwide for inspection, with reports that United has already found loose bolts in some of its planes. This as U.S. Transportation Safety Board experts continue to investigate the flight whose mishap set off alarm bells. Their job became easier as a Portland, Oregon teacher named Bob discovered the fallen piece of the Alaska Airlines jet in his backyard.
I'm excited to announce that we found the door plug. Woo! Thank you, Bob.
The NTSB is also collecting passenger cell phones which dropped to earth, as well as other fragments.
Our focus right now is on this aircraft to determine what happened, how it happened, and to prevent it from happening again. We declared an emergency.
The Alaska Airlines flight was on its way from Portland to California when the panel blew off shortly after takeoff, with passengers calling it a trip from hell.
The sound was very loud. For it to suck the guy's T-shirt off and take his phone off his hand, I've seen it in the movies, but this is real.
The low altitude prevented serious injuries and the plane landed safely. But it's not the first time Boeing's 737 jets have been grounded. 2 deadly crashes of an earlier version kept the planes out of the skies for more than a year. This incident raises more questions about rushed production.
Boeing seems to me to have a systemic problem with quality control. They're turning out 38 MAXs a month. Think about that. One of these giant airplanes is coming off the assembly line every single day.
Boeing's only comment about the latest incident is a post online that it agrees with and fully supports the mandatory inspections of all 171 of its planes. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
There are new fears today about the 3-month-long Israel-Hamas war expanding. The Iran-backed group Hezbollah says an Israeli airstrike has killed one of its elite commanders in southern Lebanon. Wissam Tawil is the most senior Hezbollah militant to be killed since the conflict started in October. The leader of Hezbollah was already threatening to step up attacks. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the Middle East this week, in part to calm tensions in the region. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the number of dead in the fighting continues to grow. 2 children were killed when their house was hit and they couldn't get medical help, according to a family friend. Well, still ahead, he was a star basketball player set to play for BC at the Canada Games, but while his court skills were there, he simply wasn't up to play the game. How one athlete tackled obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's coming up after the break.
AJ McMinn grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland. She is a huge fan of the Canucks. And later this month, she's going to be coming here to Vancouver for the very first time just to watch the Canucks play. And right now, she is on the line from Manchester. AJ, hello there.
Hello.
So just how is it that you have come to love the Vancouver Canucks so much?
So it was like when we were like in our like down days, which most of you know it wasn't really that long ago. It wasn't really my choice. My nanny went to Vancouver to visit my family that live in Langley. And I was like, oh yeah, bring me home like a sports hoodie. And I was thinking like Under Armour or Adidas or Nike. And instead she got me home a Canucks hoodie with the millionaire logo on it. That would have been in 2010, 2011. And I have been a Canucks fan ever since. Got like really into it when I was like 15, 16, started setting up for the games, and just have been kind of hooked ever since.
But who do you share this passion with? If you're staying up till 3 a.m. watching Canucks game, who do you get up the next day and talk about it with?
So my partner, he's a Sharks fan. So his team also face off at like 3:30. Then Canucks Twitter, I'm on hockey Twitter and I'm usually live tweeting or talking to those guys. I have a friend from England as well. He was over in Vancouver there last year to see the Canucks. So it's kind of just like all my friends and stuff, we're all massive EIHL fans, which is the elite league in the UK, which is kind of our NHL. So we all have a team. So it's usually, we all post in the morning, like if I beat my friend's team, being like, oh, what happened there, and vice versa. So it's kind of like my little friend group.
Wow. Now, you know you can watch these games on delay, right? You don't have to watch them live. I mean, why is that?
Sometimes. I do sometimes. But there's nothing like live hockey, is there? Like seeing your team win, or if you're a Canucks fan in the last kind of 5-6 years, lose at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, but you just keep coming back. I really admire them. How do you feel about how the team's doing this season?
Honestly, I'm still in disbelief we can score a power play goal, if I'm quite honest. It's really nice. I like the new system that we're playing. The players seem to be a lot more on board. And there's like I was talking to someone from Vancouver last night. There's a buzz about the team, and not just like in the fans, like on the ice. The players, they seem a lot more invested and buzzing. And I don't know, it just feels really good to be a Canucks fan right now. And I'm going to enjoy it at last.
How did this trip to Vancouver come about?
So I woke up on Christmas morning to like 5 envelopes sitting on my boyfriend's mom's table. And the first one was like, what am I? And it was a picture of a van. And I instantly started crying because I was like, are we going to Vancouver? Opened the rest of them, and the last one was like, you're not going to a Canucks game, you're going to 3. And my boyfriend got me it for Christmas. That was my Christmas present.
You're going to 3 Vancouver Canucks games while you're here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
I cried. I literally collapsed to the floor and started crying.
Welcome back. Engineers are trying to fix a big issue that developed with the latest U.S. moon mission just hours after liftoff.
And liftoff of the first United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket, launching a new era in spaceflight to the moon and beyond.
The problem started about 7 hours after this pre-dawn launch from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The lunar lander failed to orient its solar panel correctly for its long and roundabout trip. If the issue isn't resolved, it threatens the mission for a soft landing of the spacecraft on the moon. And Astrobotic Technology is hoping to be the first private company to do just that. If successful, it'll be the first U.S. moon landing mission in more than 50 years. Well, 2023 was a bad year for storms and other severe weather events. In fact, it was the fourth costliest ever. That's according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. And as CBC's David Thurton shows us, those figures come with a human price as well.
It's been a rough year for many Canadian homeowners.
The level of the water was about 1 meter inside of the home. So my home was destroyed.
The spring flooding in Quebec's Charlevoix region was one weather story among many. You name it, 2023 saw it.
Oh my God!
Tornadoes, pelting hail, and of course, devastating wildfires.
This was a pretty intense year, as Canadians know.
New numbers from the Insurance Bureau of Canada show for the second year in a row, Canada exceeded $3 billion in insured damage from severe weather. The costliest, BC's Okanagan-Shuswap wildfires coming in at $720 million in insured losses, followed by Ontario's severe summer storms at $340 million. Then the spring ice storm that hit Ontario and Quebec at $330 million. It's becoming an annual trend, earning Canada a reputation for being an expensive place to insure.
What these numbers mean is that when insurers globally take a look at Canada, they view Canada as one of the riskier places in the world to insure and to do business.
This researcher says governments, businesses, and Canadians must make neighborhoods and homes more resistant to floods, wildfires, and storms.
And that's why we keep talking about climate adaptation, for example, so adapting our communities, our homes, so that insurance companies don't have to pull out of insuring our homes.
Pinochet says he couldn't get flood insurance.
I accept what happened, and I'm going to try to do my best to be happy in my new place and continue to make my work.
His house had to be demoed, and he was forced to walk away from the place he called home for 26 years. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Let's bring back our Darius Madavi. And Darius, I guess no surprise that those wildfires were at the top of that list.
Yes, that's right. So the fires in Okanagan and Shuswap, $720 million of the $3.1 billion total spent this year. Fourth most ever spent on disaster relief in a single year paid out by the insurance companies. So it was a bad year, and unfortunately we might be poised for a repeat, at least in terms of the fire that we could be getting, because the drought situation is continuing. But we'll get there in a second. I want to start by talking about the polar vortex and why it's our best friend, because the polar vortex sounds scary. You probably heard the term thrown around, but in reality, the polar vortex is just a term for this big low pressure system that usually sits just over top of the Arctic, and it's constantly swirling, keeping that really cold Arctic air trapped there over Nunavut and Greenland, and not letting it come down to us. And we have this, we can thank this really strong jet stream that's usually circling that polar vortex. But when the jet stream weakens, we can see that that air can start making its way down into other parts of North America, down really anywhere. And in this case, it is hitting us right here in BC. And if we take a look at our temperature map, our temperature forecast over the next few days, we can see that that is the case. You can see this big purple air mass of that Arctic air. The jet stream is weakened and it makes its way down here, dropping temperatures an incredible amount. Now, this is one of the more dramatic models, saying the temperatures here in Vancouver are going to get down close to -15, -20 at times overnight. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. The models are very much split on what exactly is going to happen, which is a big problem. Now, they do all agree that the Arctic air is going to make its way down here. They disagree on how long it's going to be here and whether we're going to get precipitation in that time, because that will mean that we will get some snow. That is the big question here. This is our current system. We get that rain still right into tomorrow. Plenty of snow for the interior. That's going to continue. We continue to see that snow throughout the interior for several more days and then continue to pick itself back up. Even on Thursday, we may see a little bit of snow make its way here. And so that's why we're going to have a lot of uncertainty in our forecast over the next few days because the models will not agree and neither can I. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. The models will hopefully start to agree more soon. But as we get into late this week, this is the big question. This system that's just there off the Pacific, it looks like it's going to come and smash into the entire coast. But this model has it coming down here and arcing its way down and missing us completely. Is that going to be what happens? That is the big question. We'll have to wait and see. Now, in terms of conditions, you can see plenty of activity still tomorrow, but starting to taper off into the afternoon, besides here in the southeast. You can see we will likely get some more snow across the mountains tonight, but potential for it even at sea level. This is, again, where the models diverge quite a bit, so we'll wait and see. But I'd assume just some rain here for the most part, unless it does bring that cold air down with it. And then lastly, here's our very uncertain forecast for the near future. But I will say, personally, I do hope we get some thunderstorms. I do miss the crackle of thunder.
I'm a prairie girl. I miss that as well. Thank you. Busiest guy in the newsroom today, Darius.
Thanks, Tanya.
If you're feeling down, it could be the winter blues, yes, or it could be the news cycle, or maybe it's something much bigger. We wanted to spend the month celebrating those who faced some serious challenges head on. We're calling this series Motivation Mondays, and I'll let your guide, Suman Kandola, tell you all about it. A warning, though, this piece does contain mention of suicide.
I'm Suman Kandola, and the past few years of uncertainty and chaos have left me deeply unmotivated and made me lose my zest for life. As somebody who is genuinely curious and inquisitive about the world and the people in it, this was really hard for me to digest. So I knew something needed to change, and that's how Monday Motivation was born. Monday Motivation explores the tenacity and champion mindset behind everyday people experiencing the fight of their lifetime. So come with me as I borrow some hope, courage, and perspective from brave and inspiring individuals. Meet Bradley, a vibrant and intelligent soul whose childhood dream shattered once he uncovered his OCD diagnosis. What once made him lose his will to live now fuels his current passion. This is his story.
I feel like personally I have the most love for basketball because it's one of the sports where you can, with a ball and a hoop, just spend hours by yourself. I just fell in love with just going out by myself, putting my headphones in, and just pretending like I was out on the court. You know, every basketball player's done the 3-2-1 drill where you pretend like the clock's counting down, you're down by 1 point, and you have to sink the game-winning shot. My uncles played at Mission Secondary, and they were very well known in the basketball community, my dad as well. And then my brother won a provincial championship. And so I carried that forward, and I just tried to perfect myself in that sport. When I was told about what OCD entails, and I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder at 17, I realized that I had been experiencing the symptoms since about 13 or 14. But it didn't get to a point where I had asked for help until I was 17. When I was diagnosed with OCD, my friends were like, oh, like, we know you had it. Like, it was just like being neat and tidy. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a mental illness. It's categorized as one of the most debilitating mental illnesses you can have. The thoughts come and the repetitions come, but I'm not doing the repetitions because I want to. I'm doing them because I feel like I have to. For me, the things I was doing, washing my hands over and over and over again, having to do things repetitively, putting on my clothes a certain way, the attraction or need for certain numbers, I hated it. Like, it terrorized me. I made Team BC to go to Canada Games after my grade 11 season, and the thoughts just kept increasing. I had to tell the coach I can't play, and at that time I wasn't open about my mental health, so
What did you tell him?
I told him that I was taking summer school, actually. I didn't want to face the repercussions of saying that I'm struggling with my mental health. So I told him I'm taking chemistry in summer school. I can't commit to basketball. I took like a month off, and my dad's like, what's going on? Like, you haven't taken more than 2 days off in the past 3 years of your life. And I didn't know it was OCD at this time, so I didn't know how to get help for it. After that, it just kept getting worse and worse until I had my first thoughts of suicide. That was in summer, so after I quit, or told the provincial team coach I couldn't play, I ended up telling my high school coach I wasn't going to play my grade 12 year. I mean, my nickname growing up was Baller Brage, so I had this identity tied to me of being a basketball player, and for people to hear that I'm not playing, it was quite shocking, I imagine.
What was it like for you, though?
Well, I mean, at that time I didn't want to be alive, so I didn't foresee a future where I was going to have to live without playing basketball because I didn't plan on living. So I didn't really process the whole basketball part. I was just so thinking about a way out. Yeah. From July to October of 2017 was 4 months of suicide attempts, hospitalization, psychiatric care, psychological care, until I got in like a relatively steady place. I remember thinking, on paper, my life is great. I have an amazing family, I'm good at basketball, I do well in school, I'm healthy, like why am I like this? But that's what mental illness does, is it ignores everything good in your life, and it picks little tiny things for you to obsess or anxious about or to get sad about, to the point where you feel like you have nothing. I actually did play my grade 12 year, and it was the most confidence, the most fun I've had on a basketball court in my grade 12 year.
Why do you think that? You just come out of like so much darkness. Were you out of the woodworks?
Not completely. No, I wasn't. I think that a part of my outlook on basketball changed through it all. I went from this is the be-all end-all of my life to I'm just going out here to do the best I can. And I was still highly competitive. I was still taking it very seriously, but I didn't have this where I needed to be a high-level post-secondary athlete or I don't want to be alive attitude anymore. It was, let's play my grade 12 year because I know that high school sports is amazing and I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about that mind shift, right? Because you had just come from a place of, let's say, not seeing light, and now you're seeing light.
Yeah.
And like, what did that renewed sense of wanting to be alive feel like?
Yeah, I've never told anybody this before, but for those 4 months, before I went to bed, I would ask myself, if there was a button next to you that could end your life, would you push it? And for those 4 months, the answer was yes. Over the times, the answer would be less and less of a confident yes and more of a, I don't know, like, let's give it one more day or one more week. And then eventually I asked myself that at night and I was like, no, I want to be alive. And I had a few offers to play post-secondary actually after that. Up until the date where I had to, accept the offer or not, I started noticing that my anxiety and stress and everything were in a OCD was getting back up to those levels, and I was like, I need more time to get help. There's a line between mental illness and what it means to be mentally strong on the court. I always considered myself very mentally strong on the court. I had a high competitive drive. I really wanted to make my teammates succeed. I wanted to respect my coach. Those are all the things that, obviously, if you don't have respect for your coach, your teammates, then that's the side of the mental that you need to improve. But as far as mental illness goes, if you're, in my words, I consider myself, I was sick, I was ill. And that has nothing to do with weakness. That has to do with things out of my control. And so the fact that I pushed through that and the fact that I was able to deal with that and still come and play my grade 12 year and now run this event, that shows more strength than I couldn't think of anything more strong that I could have done than that. I put so much all into basketball at young that I make sure now that if I ever lose one part of my life, I still have something else to look forward to. If you put all your energy, the old saying, eggs into one basket, then it's like that gets taken away, you can go through something pretty serious, and that's what happened with basketball. So now I make sure I have a lot of different areas of my life where I put energy into, and that includes family and friends, that includes mental health, that includes staying active. A lot of components that if you lose one, you still have the other, and you have purpose throughout your life.
Well, coming up, it's their time to shine. Lacrosse athletes have flocked to Langley trying to make the cut for Team Canada. We'll show you all the action coming up next.
I think, like, for most people, when they think about race walking, they think, oh, it's walking, it must be easy. So I think most people would be fascinated to learn that our heart rate, just as high as when you're running, my heart rate over 20K, 180 beats a minute. I think the toughest thing about race walking is just the amount of time on feet you need for training. It's an endurance sport, so you gotta be out there enduring. So it's just a lot of training, it's a lot of time commitment, but also you just get to be out on the streets with the people, so it's a lot of fun.
Evan Dunphy has been an absolute stalwart for such a long time.
I think in my competitive career, the accomplishment I'm most proud of has to be that Tokyo bronze medal.
Canada's Evan Dunphy has won bronze in Tokyo.
The way I got it in the final stages there and making that childhood dream come true, it's a moment I'll never forget. I think the most challenging moment in my competitive career has certainly been that adjustment from the 50K down to the 20K as an older athlete trying to focus on that shorter distance and just finding the motivation. So I'm there now, really happy with that, but that certainly was a couple of years of really having to dig deep and refine that why. Success in Paris in 2024 for me is certainly going to be going out in that 20K, leaving it all on the table, getting to that finish line knowing I have nothing left in the tank. Wherever that puts me, I'll, pardon the pun, walk away feeling pretty happy.
Welcome back. It's a first for some female lacrosse players from across Western Canada this weekend.
Athletes descended on Langley to try out for the inaugural Team Canada Female Box Lacrosse. Check it out.
We're having our Western training camp tryouts for Team Canada Women's National Team. The compete level has been unreal. They all want a spot and they're giving everything they have.
This weekend has just put into perspective how important women's sports are. I'm seeing what I wish I saw when I was younger. You didn't see very many women's lacrosse players. It wasn't broadcast, it wasn't promoted that much. You don't realize that you could dream something like this until all the hard work that gets put into it and now makes it a reality. The next step for this is they make a professional women's box lacrosse league and we start selling out arenas. Sky's the limit, you got it.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6.
You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem. It's our free app, as well as on YouTube and on our website. We're at cbc.ca/BC.
We'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.
Good night.